Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar aimed at showing Land Portal's new thematic portfolios. I should also say good morning to our friends in the US and South America and other places. My name is Nicholas Pagliarino, and I am a research analyst at Land Portal. And I'm excited to be your host today and take you on this epic adventure through Land Portal's new thematic portfolios. This is a follow-up webinar to a previous webinar that was hosted by my colleague Marcello, who gave you a tutorial on the webinar on Land Portal's country pages. So today I'll be focusing on the new thematic portfolios. So to find these portfolios, you need to go to landportal.info, and then you need to click on Land Book, and then you'll see Themes. And then that page brings you to these three thematic portfolios. So to start with a bit of background on this project and on Land Portal in general, Land Portal is an online platform that links open data with a variety of research organizations, NGOs, local partners, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders. Land Portal aims at collecting and disseminating information on land at the global level, and is the leading online destination for information on land. And I should also add that if you have any comments during the webinar, please feel free to submit your comments via the chat box. I'm standing by here with my colleague Lizette, who will be helping me answer questions as they come in. So last week, Land Portal launched 3 new Land Book thematic portfolios. One on Indigenous and community land rights, one on forest tenure, and one on land and gender. These portfolios enable users to easily access and utilize a broad range of relevant data, primary and secondary literature, news articles, online discussions, and events. These portfolios provide users with a better alternative to going onto Google and sifting through countless search results if you're looking for information on land. Many of these search results on Google may be unrelated to the topic of interest, and what we do is we collect the data and really relate it to these, on the thematic pages at least, related to these 3 topics. So one on forest tenure, land and gender, and Indigenous and community land rights. And I should note that in the coming weeks, we will also be including a new thematic portfolio on urban tenure, as well as a thematic portfolio on land investments. So by linking and categorizing a wealth of land-related information, Land Portal's new thematic portfolios are a one-stop shop for researchers, activists, journalists, civil societies, and other stakeholders engaged in land governance issues. So let's begin by looking at the thematic portfolios. Maybe I'll just actually pause for a quick second and see, first of all, who is participating in this webinar. You can just state your name if you haven't already, and your organization, and also if there are any preliminary questions about Land Portal generally. All right, so we begin by looking at the Indigenous and community land rights page. So by clicking on this thematic portfolio, you're taken to a page that focuses specifically on Indigenous and community land rights. And you can see at the top of the screen the latest publications and news articles related to this topic. And you can also, you're also provided with a interesting new narrative, which provides a summary of the relevant information relating to Indigenous peoples and local communities. And this comprehensive narrative was written by Land Portal and the Rights and Resources Initiative. Further down on the screen, you can see that there's a section on legal protection of Indigenous and community land at the international level. And by clicking on this section, you're given a drop-down menu with more text and information on international human rights treaties, such as the Voluntary Guidelines on the Responsible Governance of Tenure, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and other international instruments. and whether or not what those instruments say in terms of protection of Indigenous and community land rights. If you click on legal protection of Indigenous and community land at the national level, you're given information on whether or not national laws are currently protecting the rights of land rights of Indigenous peoples and local communities. And we cite here RRI's 2015 Global Baseline Report, which found that only 18% of the world's land is legally recognized as owned or controlled by Indigenous peoples and local communities. We also, further on down the screen, are given a summary of the findings from Landmark. Landmark contains a set of legal indicators that measure the extent to which Indigenous and community lands are recognized and protected by law. And you're provided a summary based on the indicator findings from that research. And we hope to also have Landmark's data published on this page in the coming weeks. In the third paragraph, you can see a bit of information on the right to free, prior, and informed consent, whether this right is incorporated into national laws, and some other research is cited by Land Matrix and the Forest Peoples Program. Under current issues, you can learn about the new Land Rights Now campaign, which is the global call to action on Indigenous and community lands. You can learn about an exciting new financing institution called the International Land and Forest Tenure Facility. You can also learn about new legal reforms underway in Myanmar, Liberia, and Kenya, and other countries, and some of the global witness research that was published on the violent murders of land rights and environmental defenders around the world. So what these narratives really do is provide you an overview of the current issues, and this is particularly helpful for new researchers and journalists who are interested in land. And the last section of this thematic narrative focuses on community land rights and climate change mitigation. And this section focuses on research conducted by WRI, the World Resources Institute, and the Rights and Resources Initiative from a 2014 report entitled Securing Rights and Combating Climate Change, which found that when communities have no or weak legal rights, their forests tend to be vulnerable to deforestation and thus become a source of carbon dioxide emissions. So all of the information cited in these new narratives is, there are links to these different sources that you can see in the references section. So moving along, if you scroll further down the page, you can see a set of indicators that relate specifically to Indigenous peoples and local communities. And these indicators were gathered from the World Bank Land Governance Assessment Framework, as well as RRI's forest tenure data, which measures the amount of forest land owned by Indigenous peoples and local communities. And there are several indicators related to the subject. But what this thematic portfolio does that the country portfolios do not do is it really aggregates all the data and relates it all to a particular theme. And you can use this data in an interactive map. So right here, the default setting is forest lands designated by governments for Indigenous peoples and local communities. And this is taken from RRI's forest tenure data. And we feel very privileged to have this data, and we thank RRI for sharing this data on our platform. And by using this data on the mapping tool, you can see the differences in terms of the amount of hectares that are designated by governments for Indigenous peoples and local communities. And you can change the indicator to look at ownership rights of Indigenous peoples and local communities, as well as the other indicators. And you can see, click on different countries to see the amount. And then further on down, you'll see a ranking of countries, and the default setting is the World Bank Land Governance Assessment Framework. And you can see a ranking of countries based on the scores provided for the World Bank LGAF data. And we hope to also publish in this section Landmark's data on the tenure security of Indigenous and community lands. So further on down, you'll see media sources. So then you'll see even a story came out today relating to Indigenous peoples in the United States. So news sources from the media that come out are constantly being posted on this page, and also latest blogs, and then events and debates, and partner organizations, all relating to Indigenous peoples and local communities. And then lastly, you'll see the land library resources that are available. So if you're a researcher and you want to sort of think about a new research topic, you can look at the various sources available in the land library relating to this topic on this page. I'll stop for a moment here and see if there are any questions. All right, so what we'll do now is take a look at the land and gender page. So just by doing that, in order to access the land and gender page, you'll have to click on themes again. You'll see right here, the land and gender page. And the land and gender portfolio links open data and information on women's land rights and other gender issues, and includes a compelling narrative written by Landesa, one of the world's leading NGOs working to secure women's land rights around the world. And we are very grateful to have Landesa write this fantastic narrative, which summarizes the major issues relating to gender and land. And of course, at the top here, you can see the latest news stories and publications relating to land and gender. So the narrative provides an in-depth summary of current issues relating to women's land rights, including the global number of women landholders, how current laws and customary practices are gender discriminatory, and the role of women in the context of community land use, management, and decision-making. The narrative also discusses the gender impacts of climate change, as well as the ripple effects that strengthening women's land rights has on poverty reduction, food security, economic growth, and other sustainable development objectives. The land and gender portfolio also provides, further on down, you can see the indicators that are published by FAO, OECD Development Center, and the World Bank. As with these other thematic portfolios, the land and gender portfolio allows users to compare and analyze this data across a broad range of countries. So if you scroll down and use the mapping tool, you can see, for instance, this data on gender and the different scores against the indicators across a variety of countries. And you can use it to compare if you're trying to write a comparative analysis or just conduct research on your own. And the land and gender page also includes, of course, the ranking tool. And the default indicator measures whether women and men have equal access, equal and secure access to land use control and ownership. So if you're interested in accessing this data and comparing it across various countries, you can just go ahead and click on the database, and then you'll see all these different indicators that are related to the thematic subject of gender and land. And of course, further on down the page, you'll see the latest media stories, latest news stories, latest blogs, latest events, partner organizations, as well as the land library resources related to land and gender. And as we get new publications at Land Portal, we'll continue to ingest new open access publications and tag them with the land and gender tag, and that will automatically link them to this page. So I just want to stress that these pages are continuing to be updated, and will continually be updated over the next few months in the future. So lastly, I will show the final thematic portfolio, and that is forest tenure. So the forest tenure thematic portfolio contains a wealth of information on forest tenure and governance issues. At the top of the portfolio, users are presented with a captivating narrative written by forestry experts at the Center for International Forestry Research, C4. Through the forest tenure portfolio, users can learn about current forest tenure reforms, and some of the research conducted by RRI on this subject is cited in the narrative. If you click right here, you'll see information on forest tenure reforms globally. You'll also see information on the connections between secure forest tenure and deforestation, as well as forest tenure as recognized by international agreements, and also the gender disparities within community forestry systems. On this portfolio, further on down, users can access RRI's indicator data on forest tenure, as well as the World Bank's Land Governance Assessment Framework data on forest commons. And then further down, with the ranking tool, you can see the land matrices, the land matrices data on large-scale forest land acquisitions. So you can see the number of hectares that were involved in these deals, and it provides a ranking in terms of total number of hectares. And of course, further on down this thematic portfolio, you can see the latest news, latest events, and the land library resources. So once again, these are all linked to the theme of forest tenure. And as I mentioned before, we plan to publish 2 new thematic portfolios, one on urban tenure with a narrative written by Habitat for Humanity, and one on land investments. So the development of these Land Portal's thematic portfolios is an ongoing collaborative effort involving contributions from a diverse range of research organizations, civil societies, and other stakeholders. In the future, Land Portal will continue to populate its thematic portfolio as new information becomes available. And if you're an organization with research and you're willing to make it open access, please contact us and we'd be happy to talk with you about how to ingest the data and upload it on these thematic portfolios. And I believe the best place to contact us is hello@landportal.info if you have any information or any questions or comments relating to these thematic pages. So it's our belief that through enhancing the evidence base available on these thematic portfolios, Land Portal hopes to provide a common vocabulary on land issues, raise awareness, inform policy debates, and establish a platform on which information and ideas can be exchanged. Empowered with the broad range of free and user-friendly access to information available on Land Portal's thematic portfolios, users can work together to influence land tenure reform, monitor progress on securing the land rights of the poor and vulnerable, and promote responsible, transparent, and participatory land governance around the world. And thank you so much for participating in this webinar. And I'll just stop for a moment and see if there are any questions on the YouTube chat. So we get one question asking us, are you planning to have more thematic portfolios in the future? And the answer is yes. And I should have mentioned a few other ones. And I think I mentioned urban tenure and land investments. And we are also in the midst of creating additional thematic portfolios, such as one on rangelands, drylands, and pastoralism, land, climate change, and the environment, land and food security, and I believe that, and as I mentioned, urban tenure and land investments. So these first 3 are just the initial portfolios, but we plan to publish additional ones in the future. We hope that we'll use them and find them helpful. So we received a question about when do we expect to launch the land investment portfolio, and the answer is a little bit up in the air, but it's definitely going to be within the next few weeks. We're waiting to hear back about who will be writing the land investment portfolio narrative, and we're aggregating the data now, so just a few weeks, hopefully. And let me just stop for another moment and see if there are any additional questions on the YouTube chat. And again, thank you all so much for taking the time to come out and watch this webinar. We're really happy that there's some interest in these thematic portfolios. You see Francesco's comment here. And I guess I'll just say thank you very much, Francesco. Us at the Land Portal are very excited about this project. So, and again, we want it to be a collaborative effort. So we hope that there'll be a dialogue between various stakeholders about how to improve these thematic pages. Because really, we see them as a work in progress, and there's a lot of room for improvement, I think. And let me just wait one more moment and see if there are any additional questions. All right, looks like at this stage there are no additional questions that anyone has. Oh, I'm sorry, one moment. We received another question about whether the total hectares in community lands are separate from the calculations in forestry deals. So the answer to that question is yes, because if you look at the forestry page, sorry, one data set is from RRI on forest tenure, and that is shown in the indicator table and in the map. So that's RRI's data. And then the data I mentioned on large scale forest land acquisitions is done by Land Matrix. So they come from two different sources. One's from RRI and the other is from Land Matrix. So it'd be interesting for users to compare the findings across different source providers. And I'll stop for just another moment. It seems like questions are kind of coming in relatively slow, but that's totally fine. And I'm sorry, there's a little bit of delay, so some of these questions I'm getting them a little bit late, but I'm hoping I think so far I've answered all the questions. Please let me know if I haven't. Okay, I think with that, we're just going to close here today. As I said, there's 3 thematic portfolios up, but there's many more to come. And we really hope that all the stakeholders around the world, researchers, activists, journalists, civil society organizations, they all use our thematic portfolios to really build their knowledge and influence land reform around the world. And on behalf of the Land Portal team, I just want to say thank you so much for participating in this webinar. And we look forward to publishing new work for you to use in the future. So thanks so much and have a great afternoon or day.